Shalom Aleichem. Today we will say a few words about the parasha of this Shabbat, the portion of the Torah of this week, Parashat Lech Lecha. Now Lech Lecha is referring, of course, to our father Avraham Avinu. And apparently, here is what happened. Let me first begin with what the Midrash says. Before the Torah spoke anything about Avraham, whom we know when he was already at the age of 75 years old, then we started to know anything about the greatness of our father Abraham. But what happened in his life before? It says in the book Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. It's a midrash that was written by Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanos about 2,000 years ago. Yes, he was one of the earliest sages of the Mishnah, of the Tannaim. And it says there that Abraham, when he was 3 years old, he already had an encounter with God, which means that he met God. We will explain soon what it means. At the age of 3. And then again at the age of 18. And then at the age of 42, I think. And then up to 75. Then he finally met him for good. What does it mean? Here is what it means. In the time of when Abraham was born, his generation was permeated with idol worshipping. All kinds of gods. There is even a midrash that tells us that his own father, Terah, was the owner of a shop in which they built all kinds of idols, each one according to his needs. Well, it's a long story. And then Abraham came and he destroyed all the idols of his father, and that's how begins a big dispute between his father Terah and Abraham, which at the end it led him to the king Nimrod, who threw him in the furnace, and then a miracle happened and Abraham Avinu came out unscathed, and that's when the fame of Abraham Avinu became quite known throughout the world as a man who is declaring for the first time in the world, declaring the oneness of God. And that's why he is our father. And that's why there is no one that can compete with the greatness of our father Abraham. Not even Moshe Rabbeinu, our master Moshe. Even though there is much to say about this, but I prefer to go back to the story of Abraham. Our sages said in Pirkei Avot, Asara nisyonot nitnasa Avraham Avinu. Hashem tested our father Abraham 10 times. The first test, of course, was one when he was thrown into the furnace of Nimrod, and Abraham could have lived a very easy life. He was already famous for his wisdom and everything. If only he did not have this dispute with the king Nimrod, who considered himself a god, according to the Midrash. But as I said before, he came out untouched, thank God, and that's how the spiritual career of Avraham Avinu began. Then the next test was when God tells him, with the words that begin our parasha of this Shabbat, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha מארצך וממולדתך ומבית אביך אל הארץ אשר אראך. God appeared to Abraham. We have to understand that appearing to Abraham does not mean that he appeared as we know, as we can understand. There's no way we can understand anyway the appearance of God. It means that Abraham understood with all every fiber of his system, understood that God is the only God in the universe, and he is asking him He gives him an order. Go out. Leave. Abandon. Leave your country. Leave the city where you were born. Leave the house of your father. Where to? To a land which I will show you. Does not even tell him which land. And yet, Abraham Avinu immediately, without any hesitation, he goes on his trip to the land where his intuition is guiding him, of course, encouraged, of course, by that which we can call prophecy, that God is telling him to do so. And that was a test, a very difficult test. How can he leave everyone that he knew? Everyone that he loved? Family, cousins, uncles, father, mother. His father was Terah. The name Terah appears in the Torah. But the name of his mother does not appear in the Torah. It appears in the Talmud. And apparently her name was Amatla, but Karnebo. She was a righteous woman. She's not mentioned in the Torah because nothing special was told about her. But the Kabbalists say that her name is a great segula. If you say it 7 times, you will be able to save yourself from some precarious situations. Okay. So Hashem is asking Abraham to do something that is impossible. Leave everything, your country, everyone that you know, and where? To a place that you don't even know. Where can you find someone who can agree to that? Of course, there is a big question here, because if you continue on the verses of the Torah, it says, and God promises him, and I will bless you, and I will and I will proclaim your name, I will make it great, and you will become a source of blessing to all the nations. And our sages said that in those words God promised him, now he doesn't have any children, but he will have children then. He will be supremely rich. Like elsewhere in the Torah it says, Abraham zaken baba yamin v'Adonai berachet Abraham bakol, and Hashem blessed Abraham with everything that you can dream about. But Hashem apparently has promised Abraham, I will give you all this. Right? Well, listen. Let's say somebody lives in Israel, he doesn't have any money, and someone comes to him and he says, you know why? You know what? I have a position for you in America. And we promise you, if you come and join us, you will become rich, you will become affluent, you will become very famous, and you will have a beautiful house, and a maid, and everything. Who's going to refuse that? But if truly all this has been promised to Abraham, then where is the test? Now, of course, anybody would agree to go for such a thing, with such promise. So we understand, our sages explain, the Mefarshim explain, that the truth is that what was difficult for Abraham was to go to a place that he doesn't know, but at the same time he is expected to forget about his family, to forget about his friends. That is very difficult to do. And yet, Abraham did not hesitate at all. Exactly like the last test in which he was tested with the most excruciating and painful order to do, to sacrifice his son Yitzchak, his only son, the son that he prayed for so many years, which finally he was given, and now he's asking to sacrifice him, to slaughter him. Anybody would have hesitated, especially that God is asking him, Ki beYitzchak yikare lecha zara. One day your son Yitzchak will be the ultimate seed of Abraham, which means the Jewish people belongs to Abraham, not any other nation. But that's already a matter that has to be discussed. All right? that means Abraham should be hesitating. I mean, if you promise me that Yitzchak is going to be the father of all my seeds, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and so forth, then why did you have to go immediately to answer the call of God? You have time. Let Yitzchak first grow up, and then bring children, and then you can sacrifice him if you want. No, that's not what it says. And that we will read next time, of course. Next parasha, in Vayera, we will read that Abraham did not wait. Vayashkem Abraham baboker. The next day he got up, immediately he took on this journey with Yitzchak, in which ultimately he practically brought about the what was commanded to him. Only, of course, God sent his angel and he stopped him, and that's already the other story that will come yet maybe next time. But in the meantime, my question is, it's unbelievable. Abraham is fantastic. Not only what Hashem is asking from him is so difficult, but without hesitation he goes on to observe the will of God. That's what made Abraham so great. That's why he was chosen of all the people in the world. That's why he was chosen to become the father of the nation of God. And the nation of God is Israel. Of course, the nation are disputing that, but they know the truth. They know very well the truth. And ultimately, they will come to it in a more precise way, in a much clearer way than what they do today. But at the same time, unfortunately, for all the generations, the Jewish people has suffered so much just because of that. Because the world knows the truth. They know that God chose the people of Israel to be His nation. They are the children of Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. But the religions of the world are disputing this. We understand why. We respect them very much. But that's not the point. The point is that they will come to realize that the Jewish people are the children of God, but that does not mean that being chosen by God means that you are chosen for a good life. Oh no. Quite the contrary. This is exactly the reason why we have been hated, why we have suffered so much, why we have been massacred, expelled, what not has been, and yet we are still here, telling the world, hello, we are still here, and very strong, even though we are small in numbers. But again, as I have mentioned many times before, the Torah said that 3,300 years ago, it says in Parashat Va'etchanan at the end of in the beginning of the book of Devarim, which is the end of the Torah, the fifth book of Moses, it says there, Ve'atem ham'at mikol ha'amim, and you are the fewest of all nations. Now tell me, this prophecy has come true or not? I mean, after so many years, we should have counted in many, many more than that. Like many rabbis have already counted this, what we should have been counting, maybe close to 1 billion people. And yet the Torah was true. We will always remain the fewest of the nations. Does that make us inferior? No. No. Perhaps superior. Like the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He himself said in his book La Question Juive, the Jewish question, he said, well, listen, I mean, the philosopher, greatest philosopher of this generation was Jean-Paul Sartre from France. And he wrote in his book, we must admit, he's not Jewish, and he said, we must admit that we hate the Jews. But we must also admit that the reason we hate them is because they are superior to us. Let me repeat this in French, in his French. Il faut avouer que nous haïssons le juif, mais la raison pour laquelle on le haït, c'est parce qu'il est supérieur à nous. Now, if he is right or not, I don't know. He is calling us superior. Does any Jew feel that we are superior to anybody? Oh no. We have suffered too much for this presumptuous realization. And yet, apparently the people of the world think so. Otherwise, you explain to me why we are hated so much. Why hating the Jew? What did he do? Except bringing a benediction to every place where he was. When the Jews were in Spain, Spain was blessed. It was an empire. And finally in 1492, when the Jewish people were were forced to leave, wherever any land that can take them, over 600,000 Jews left, and many of them remained, and many of them were burned to death by the Inquisition. So when they left, Spain dwindled, became from a big empire then to a simple country today. Now let me tell you something of my own personal experience. About 18 years ago, I was in New York. The rabbi of the Moroccan Jewish organization, and the King Hassan the second from Morocco came as invited by the United States, and he came to New York, to Hotel Plaza. Lo and behold, many important Jews, about 70 of them, came from everywhere, from New York, of course, my own congregation, from Washington, from Montreal, Canada, and many of them came. And also from Morocco. I remember the Minister of Tourism, Monsieur Serge Berdugo, and all of us, we came, and I spoke before the king. And you have to understand, before 1948, Morocco had at least 750,000 Jews. Today you don't even find maybe 3,000 Jews. So I spoke before the king, and I blessed him and everything. It is our obligation. We loved him, and I spoke for the Moroccan television with my lousy Arabic. And yet I was forced to speak by Serge Berdugo, and yet, thank God, God helped me that I said the proper words. And in Morocco, apparently the chief rabbi of Morocco, Rabbi Aaron Monsonego, alav shalom, he said to me that what I did in 20 minutes on television was better than what they all did in 40 years in Morocco. Why? Because the Arab women and men, they cried and left at my Arabic, of course, and they were emotionally overtaken by what I said, that we love very much the king of Morocco and we love his father, alav shalom, and so forth. And I remember that day when we welcomed him in Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, in New York, of course, after my speech, and people came and they kissed his hands. It was a great day, really. And he himself, the king himself, spoke like a Talmid Chacham. He spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu, because that day was the day of 7th of Adar, the day of death of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the king, he held both my hands, and he says, where are you coming from? Which city? I said to him, I was born in Meknes, Morocco, and I grew up a little there, till the age of 14. He says, what? From Meknes? So he said, I'm quoting his words. He said, Blad al-Hachamim, the city of the sages. And then he said to me, please tell all the Jews to come back to Morocco, because when they left, al-Barakah, which means the blessing, the benediction, has left us. Today when you go to visit in Morocco, many Jews go for the tzaddikim and so forth. And when the Arabs are telling them that indeed, when you left us empty. So Baruch Hashem, you see that the Jewish people, wherever it went, any country that received them well, became rich and became blessed. And any place that made the Jews suffer, went from low to bottom. What can I say? Should I give you examples? I don't have to give you examples, unfortunately. But it happens. So why? My question is, why hate the Jew? Why we carried this hatred for more than 3,000 years? Of course, history, according to history, is about 2,000 years. But we know, according to Kabbalah, that this anti-Semitism started from Shefo and Onam, which means from before over 3,500 years ago. Of course, we know the Talmud says that God created this kind of hatred. When Hashem decided to give us the Torah at the mountain of Sinai, so it says, why we call it Sinai, from the word Sin'ah, which means hatred. Hatred has come down from heaven to the earth. Why? So that the Jewish people will always be distinguished from the other nations. So by force we have been practically separated from the nations. Ki am kadosh atta, which means apparently it means you are a holy nation. The word kadosh does not mean holy as we understand it. It means nivdal, in accordance with the commentary of the Maharal of Prague. He says that kadosh means nivdal. Nivdal means different. So we are different. In which way? I mean, they say we have a longer nose. It's not true. We have the same nose. We have the same face as everyone else. Well, it's perhaps spiritually talking, so we have been chosen to be the nation of God, to be the nation who can receive the Torah, who receives 613 mitzvot. That by itself was a source of jealousy that caused the nations to hate us, unfortunately. Of course, not all the nations. There are several nations who I don't dare say who love us, but who are okay with us. So why is that most of the world hated us so much, to the point of trying to practically exterminate us? And yet they know that the Jews were a source of fortune for that country where they lived. Well, that's a question that still has to be explained by the Mashiach when he comes. In the meantime, we spoke a little about Avraham Avinu. He is the father of this nation. Yes, it's true that after Moses brought the redemption upon the Jewish people from Egypt, many other nations who were enslaved joined the Jewish people. There is a certain calculation or certain number by one of the greatest men who lived approximately 2,300 years ago. His name was Yonatan ben Uzziel, who writes in his commentary that the Jews, when they lived together with the slaves from the other nations, altogether they counted 6 million. 3,600,000 are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 2,400,000 came from the other nations, and they also took up conversion at the mountain of Sinai, and they became Jews. They counted 6 million Jews. In this generation, right, between 1939 and 1945, we lost 6 million Jews. Yonatan ben Uzziel, long time ago, has said that the sin of the egel, of the golden calf, could culminate by bringing upon the Jewish people a calamity of this kind. I don't know what is true, what is not. I'm just saying what was written. There are other opinions that we didn't count that many, maybe 3 million, maybe 2 million. Most of the opinions are for 2 million Jews who left Egypt from the slavery. All right, so let's go back to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu excelled in the eyes of God in his perfection of his faith, the perfection of his lack of hesitation when to do something good. And he lived for one purpose, to make the name of God famous, to bring the name of God all over the world, no matter how dangerous it was for him. In his time, King Nimrod was against that. So they tried to kill Avraham. Our sages said, based on what it says in the Torah, Avraham ha'ivri. He is known as the Hebrew Avraham. What is Ivri? So the Talmud says, Shehu me'ever echad ve'a'olam kullo me'ever hasheni. It means that he is as one person standing on one side of the road, let's put it this way, and all the rest of the world is standing on the other side. Imagine when you are such a minority versus all the majorities of the world. All the world, the whole world is against you. And yet Abraham knew that. He chose that rather than to be very respected in all the nations. They knew him. Even Ephron called him Nesi Elokim Ata. You are the Prince of God. He was called by Ephron, the one who sold him the cemetery in which he was to be buried later. Him and all the other patriarchs and matriarchs. So we see here that we are talking about a person who is extremely different than whoever you know. That's a person of sincerity, a person of tremendous courage, and a person who does not hesitate when he feels that God himself is asking him to do so. Let me conclude with what I began. I began by saying that he was 3 years old when he first knew about God. The meaning of that, because it's, as I said in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it says that he met him at the age of 18, at the age of 42, at the age of 56, and then at 75. 75 is mentioned in the Torah, that he was 75 when he finally met God. The Midrash Rabbah said that Avraham Avinu was looking for God. From the age of 3, he already understood with his wisdom that was given to him that it's impossible that the idols are those who control the world. There must be one above all of them. There must be one in heaven who is controlling everything. But where is he? He kept searching all his life. He tried all the religions, all the cults, all the idol worshipping. He tried everything. At the age of 75, he said, God, where are you? That's when finally God said, here I am, Avraham. Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha. Avram, you're my man. And now I'm asking you, leave your country and go to a country which I will show you. Why? This test, we don't understand. Why did he ask him to leave his... Maybe it would have been better if he stayed in his country. This way he could change the population of his own country. No? No. God said, no. Leave. Why? One of the explanations that I would like to offer here is that God knew the potential of Abraham. He knew that Abraham is the best of the best. But he cannot reach the best of the best that he can if he stayed in the country that is tameh, impure. He has to go to the land that's holy, for his potential to the maximum would be completely exercised. Why? Because God decided that Abraham will be the father of the nation of Israel. So we need him, we need his son Yitzchak, we need his grandson Yaakov, right? The patriarchs. Why? Because only from those 3 people will come out the nation of God. To be scion of Abraham, you have to be very special. Yitzchak has to be special. Maybe some even above Abraham. That demands explanation, but not for now. Yaakov has to be even greater than his father and his grandfather. And then you can have a nation that is worthy of being the nation of God. Now, of course, when we look upon the Jewish people today, we could see so many people who are not religious, and maybe even religious people are not. Don't give pleasure to everyone. There are many discussions on that. I mean, where is this kind of in which way are they better? Well, our sages said, don't look for them to be better than others. They have also their own murderers, their thieves, and yet, listen, I mean, you know the truth. How many Jews can you see in an international prison? How many Jews? Maybe a few. But truly, our sages said, Bnei Israel Rachmanim, Bnei Rachmanim. We could find always among the Jews more understanding and more, especially more compassion. Even our own enemies, they prefer to fall in our hands than to fall in the hands of their own people. Do I have to explain? We know that. But we're talking here about spirituality, the neshama, The soul of the Jewish people is different. It's something else. I know it sounds presumptuous and I'm asking forgiveness for that. But it's a reality. It is a reality. One of the proofs is that we are still here today. I mean, the whole world tried everything to decimate us. We are still here and strong and famous. Today you go to the media, all you find is about Jews. What we have done, what we killed the Palestinian. They don't care about what they killed in us, or they don't care how they behave, how they kill themselves, or how they kill each other. No, they don't care. What is interesting in the world is when the Jew is killing 1 or 2 Palestinians. Ooh la la, that's terrible. But that we know, we accept. It's okay. We are in the hands of God. He protects us. And we also have something that will protect us forever. The promise that God gave to Abraham. He gave him the promise that we will live forever and ever. And the promise that he gave him that the land of Israel is his land. That's the land of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, as promised by God and given to the people of Israel. Shabbat Shalom.